Hey, welcome! You probably clicked on this video because you're fresh off a ranked game and this one meta slave kept beaming you with the op. No worries, my friend, you've come to the right place. I too have been shot by this stupidly broken gun too many times, and we're not alone. Millions of poor riflers all over the world have felt this resounding pain, and we must rise against the oppers. Nothing gets you more excited to play Valorant than peeking out onto long and then getting popped at the very beginning round, and then having to wait 3 minutes so you can do that all over again. Feels good, man. Today, I'll be going over exactly why this gun is just so busted in the game and things that we can do in order to better outplay it. Together, we shall rise against this cancer gun. Let's get it. What's going on, gamers? Quatch Daddy here, giving you some more tips, tricks, and guides on all things Valorant so you can clap your enemies. For more sweet videos like this one, consider liking and subbing this video and respond with what you want to see next. Really helps me out. Alright, now to address the broken ass beam gun that has killed us all far too often. Just as a review, the operator has really asserted itself to be a staple in the current metagame. Being the big daddy sniper rifle, it sits alone at the top of the weapon food chain, costing a whopping 4,500 credits. It justifies this price by bringing firepower that is absolutely unrivaled in both speed and range, being able to ruthlessly hold down angles that players use it on. The operator in Valorant is similar to the AWP in CSGO, but some alterations that Riot makes to the tactical shooter genre in general make it so that although it is weaker than its CSGO brethren in some ways, it's just absolutely broken in others. The main reasons why this gun is so insane is due to the reduced movement speed that agents have in the game compared to players in CSGO, and the general lack of utility to truly push off the enemy using the op. This will also change due to a variety of factors such as which agents are in the meta and if Riot ever decides to make some balance changes to the gun itself, but generally speaking, these are the main issues that make the op so hard to deal with as of the time of this recording. In a way, this is how Riot also intended to make the gun because it excels at holding angles and making it really hard to penetrate. With that design philosophy in mind and the gun's similarities to the AWP conceptually, we could use some high-level thinking in order to recognize just how we can get around this issue. We should also highlight the general weaknesses of the gun and when you might be in a stronger situation when you are playing as someone like a rifler. As the op excels in long-range engagements and defensive holds, using the gun definitely gets much harder when you force the operator to take close fights. Players using the gun can still definitely get work done, but you definitely won't be as well-rounded as a rifle, and using the op can get awkward, especially if you need to clear a sight or clear a close angle. In addition, as the gun is meant for instantaneous kills, another weakness is the consistent suppressing fire that it lacks, in which it really just cannot defeat a rifle. The gun has very large windows between shots, which means that if the opper misses their first shot, an enemy rifler will have a lot of time to kill them off if they play incorrectly. With this in mind, the main goal to deal with an opper would be to get them in these weak situations, in that you should close the distance as much as possible, trying to get nice and personal in your engagements. You can still obviously get no-scoped by an opper because, sometimes that happens, but you definitely still have a higher chance if you are close to them. Before we get around to potential counters to the op, I want to discuss the idea of challenging the op altogether as a concept. I just mentioned how the gun's primary strength is being able to hold angles and typically being most commonly on normal angles on the map. Even if this pattern is rather predictable, operators are still, however, going to be able to get away with that sort of behavior regardless, just due to the nature of the gun. So, as a preface to the rest of the video, sometimes you just don't have to peek an op. I know it's tempting to do so a lot of the time, and that's genuinely unintuitive to do so at times, especially when your teammates are really egging you on to do so, but I really think that you don't always have to straight up try to answer the guy holding an angle with the op. This is especially the case when that guy is across the map and you really just don't have the tools in your arsenal to answer him. The gun is designed to give the operator a distinct advantage when the situations that he sets up. Try to get through the round using other means if you can't really answer him. There are times where you might not even be able to deal with that operator and might not need to, and you can just engage another area of the map while avoiding that op altogether. The first way in order to counter an op in this game would be to try and probably come from an off angle and or utilize methods in order to make the enemy have to take a hard shot. This isn't always going to be possible in some areas simply due to the map design in this game, but there is still an extent that you can make use of this ability in order to make the opper's life just a little bit harder. There are several different tools you can utilize in the game such that you can reduce the strength of an opper and or get rid of him altogether, even better. The basis to all of these counters will be to force the opper out of his position and then to take advantage of that to catch him in that position, but more importantly is to simply create space for your team so that you can either apply pressure or actually just clear onto a site. The most commonly used example would be to smoke off an opper or use some other form of utility, use that opportunity to clear some space from a potential off angle, and then see if they re-peek so you can catch them with their pants down and then take them out. In situations where you simply run out of smokes or you find that you need to do more to answer that player, you can also use something like Jiggle Peeking as a way to gather information on the angle, while at the same time potentially being able to bait out a free shot from that person as well. For the uninitiated, Jiggle Peeking is essentially the concept of very quickly putting your body out from a corner in order to peek an angle in a quick back and forth motion. By doing this, you are heavily limiting the amount of time your enemy has to react to you in that area, and by doing this, you are able to peek much more safely and without burning any resources in particular. Most players simply do this by peeking just their shoulder out and running back away just so they can bait out an op shot and maybe get away with a little bit of information. You can also jiggle peek by jumping and strafing your way around the corner, so you only reveal yourself for actually just a split second, which is enough to get the info you need and really minimize that risk. From there, you can take that information and either come up with another way to properly answer that op, use utility, or simply avoid that angle. The choice is yours. Jiggling is a great way to grab information overall and can also be used in general and not just against oppers. Another great way to deal with an opper without using utility itself is to try and double peek the enemy with one of your teammates. This essentially means that you will have multiple teammates peek the opper all at the same time, most typically with different angles of approach in order to make that opper's life as hard as possible. With this strategy, of course, comes some risks, as you are literally using your own bodies to try and confuse or trade kills with the enemy opper, but when done correctly can be a great way to force something out. This is also especially viable when you have something like a Sage Res available in order to really cancel out any damage to your team's numbers and actually create a numbers advantage in some situations, like if you were to trade kills with that opper. There are also situations where you might find the enemy opper to be playing a similar spot or angle every time on the map, as the players tend to just get away with it anyway due to the sheer power of the gun. If that is the case, the best thing you can do in order to outplay them in this scenario would be to literally pre-fire the angle they are holding and really catch them off guard. This is definitely a higher risk approach to taking down an opper and will require strong game sense and map knowledge, commonly used with op angles and how your enemies play, but this is an extremely rewarding and punishing way to counter the op, and when done correctly can easily swing around in your favor. The downside to this obviously is if you pre-fire incorrectly and you don't get your shot off, you'll probably just get beamed and die. But in reality, it can be a play when done correctly, and especially when timed with good utility as well. Now that I've covered most of the main methods of attack in order to counter an opper, I really want to emphasize this concept at a higher level to make sure you understand why we want to counter the op. Firstly, I want to reiterate that although you can definitely try to kill the enemy opper, you can still benefit a lot just by forcing him away from his position. There are situations in the game where you can use utility to force the opper away, then he pulls up again in a new position, and then you have to use utility again. It's actually perfectly okay to have this happen to you, as the more important thing is about taking his previous position than it is about actually killing the opper. Clearing that space for your team will help you tons in strategic possibilities, and you can then use that newfound ability to your advantage to potentially take down that player and potentially others as well. Other than that, that's pretty much it, I would say. A lot of these strategies are very focused against clearing angles versus an operator, as that's what the gun excels at, but you can apply these in a lot of situations, as you might find yourself using them in more situations than you think, such as bomb clears, post plants, etc. As always, hope this video has found some use in your Valorant games, and I hope you clap the cheeks of your enemies, because that gun is just, so disgusting. Stay fresh, brothers.